In this video, we're going to review FMS Vision as it applies to accounts payable. So again, if we've gone in and created a favorite, I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm at my Google prompt. Previously, we saved our FMS Vision. So I can just click on that icon there. And again, I'm logging in using my same login information. And the menus again are displayed. There's our frequently used items as we discussed. We're going to go ahead down and go into accounts payable. So I click on the accounts payable. There's all my menu choices there to the left. Again, I'm going to go ahead and click on the little triangle, and I can see the vendors are the only thing under AP master files. I'm going to go ahead and click on the vendors, and the vendor file opens up on the window. You'll notice that it's very similar to the existing application as far as the layout is concerned. These buttons up here are what you would have found in Focus on the left-hand margin. And then again, this is the database itself. And then here's the action keys when working with the database. A couple new things here. We can go in and do a search. So let's go ahead and search on Frito-Lay. So type in the first two letters, press enter. And again, it comes up to the very first vendor in the file. Over here, we can hit our toggle button. We'll see we're with active vendors now. If I hit the toggle, it's going to bring me to inactive, and again, there's another Frito there, inactive. I can go ahead and hit toggle again, and it's going to bring me back to my active vendors. One thing we notice here, we have our Excel icon and our Adobe icon, so when you have things displayed on the grid, if you wanted to extract them down into Excel, for example, I can click on the Excel icon, and it's going to take the items displayed in the grid, and it's going to download that into Excel. So there you go, you can see there's the grid items downloaded in Excel. And close that. As we go down, I'm going to go ahead and to get inside and to work inside Frito-Lay, I'm going to check the box, and now I'm going to go ahead and pick one of the items here. So I'm going to go ahead and select Edit. As we do that, we see here's the details of Frito-Lay. Previously, you would have one or two pages. Here we have it all on one page, and you can either use the wheel on your mouse or the scroll bar here to the right to scroll down inside the vendor. Once you're inside the vendor, if you want to pull up certain lists, for example, to see what the choices are, if I come down here under payment type and I just double click in that field, it's going to pull up the list that shows me all the available fields for that individual item. So I would go ahead and select one. Same down here on terms. You can see if I wanted to see all the available terms, I can go ahead and click on that, and it brings up the terms list. A couple new fields here are the ability to email directly out of the application, and also to call the vendor as well. So for some reason, if maybe I had a question about the terms or something, I could go ahead and click on the email. It's going to open up my email application. And again, right from the vendor, you can see here that the vendor is debbiesmith@fritolay.com. So it's going to address the vendor for you in the email, and then it's going to go ahead and put in their code inside the subject line, and then you could just type in the body of your email and send it. Same thing with the phone. If I had Skype for Business or some other voice over internet, and I have a telephone number down here, I could click that and the PC would physically make that call to that vendor. What we also done here is we've put the full words as instead of abbreviation. So before that would have said NEC, which is not necessarily fully explained in what it actually means. Here we have the whole verbiage. So that's the vendors themselves. As I go through, here are the buttons again. We're in the edit mode under a vendor. This existing application has the same choices. They were just listed down the left-hand margin. So if I wanted to go into authorized accounts, I could do that, and there's the authorized account list. If I want to add something to a list, we're referring to this as the grid, and you will see this grid throughout the entire application. So if I want to add another row in the grid, I simply click on the next available line, and you can see now I'm in the edit position here when I can make some changes. So I want to add an account. I'm going to go, yes, I want to default this account, so I type a Y. The easiest way to navigate once you get inside the system here is using the tabs. So I'm going to use the tab button to tab over to department. I'm going to go ahead and key in the department number for Meat 400, and then I'm going to tab again. It brings me over to the account. I'm going to tab and key in the purchase account, and then press enter, and you can see now that the department 400 is here now in the grid, and that will be used when I go to use this vendor during accounts payable entry. So again, using the tabs is the best way to navigate throughout the system. So I can go ahead and hit exit here. Brings me back. I'm not going to go into all these individual buttons, but they're the same buttons that exist now. So as we previously saw, I can leave this vendor screen open. I'll go back to the master list. There's the master list. So we're going to go ahead and move over to accounts payable invoices, the keying of invoices. So if I come over here to transactions and go down here to enter AP transactions, as you can see, again, very familiar screen here. It looks very similar to the one in focus. So again, I key in my store number. To get at my vendors, I can do an F4 on my keyboard, like you can now in the focus application, or again, I double click inside the field and it's going to bring up the vendor list. So I'm going to go ahead and hit select here, or check the box and then hit select, and it fills in the vendor. So I'll key in the invoice number, key in the delivery date, key in the amount, press enter. Takes me to the distribution screen. As you can see here, this vendor has one single authorized account. It's displayed on the screen. So all I really need to do now is press enter, and it accepts that, tells me it balances. I hit enter again, and it moves me to the screen to add another invoice. So I'll pick a different vendor. So if we come down here and pick the second vendor here on the list, again, key in my invoice number, using my tab, I tab down to the next line, key in an amount. Oops, same as before, if I use the same invoice number, it goes and checks and tells me, hey, I can't key this invoice in because it already exists. So I'll make a change to that invoice number. Now I have the choice here. I have a distribution authorized accounts that has more than one account, so it doesn't make the assumption which account I should use. So as I said before, if I use a tab here, it then brings me right down into my grid so I can start keying. So I have $100 here, so we'll say that 25 of those were actually coupon expense, and then I hit a tab again, and it brings me to the next authorized account, which happens to be grocery purchases. So I'll key in $75, I press enter. Again, you'll see it keeps track of my balance. It's not going to let me out of this AP invoice unless I balance to 0. Once I do, I can go ahead and press enter, and again, it moves me on to down the list for the next vendor. One more example here. I'll go ahead and double click again. This time I'll pick a vendor that does not have any authorized accounts. So again, I key in the invoice number, the date, and again, I'm using my tab to work my way through. Key in the amount. And you'll notice there's no authorized account, so again, using my tab, I tab across in the grid. This is grocery, so I'm going to key in the grocery department, and then there's the purchases. I'm going to go ahead and key in the balance, the entry. So again, that's accounts payable invoice entry. I want to show you another thing. We have this AP quick entry. If you're keying in a lot of invoices, you'll save a little bit of time by using the quick entry. You'll see the screen looks familiar, except it doesn't flip you to the distribution grid. The distribution grid is already displayed on the screen. So everything is pretty much the same there. If I do the double click here, I'm going to select a vendor, key in my invoice number, use my tab to tab down, use my amount, and then at this point I can go ahead and just press enter. Since it's a single authorized account, it fills in the amount for me, and I press enter, and boom, I'm ready for another invoice. So there's a little bit of extra speed here by using the quick entry. We've made an enhancement to the system where now you can key in many different rows of distribution. In the existing application, you can only key in 4 rows here, and that was it. So now you can key in unlimited number of rows, so that should work out fairly well. One other thing, as with the existing application, you can press the previous vendor, fills in the previous vendor, again key in the invoice number, the date, the amount, I press enter, fills it in down below, and boom, I'm ready for my next invoice. To get out of here, I'm going to go ahead and hit exit. As we said, we get to the splash screen. I can then go ahead and hit the exit here to close the window. And next up, we want to go ahead and post some of those AP invoices that we've keyed in. So I'm going to come down here to GL entries by creation date. So here's a list of all the invoices that I physically keyed in today. So I'm ready to post those. I can just simply come up here and do the submit posting just like you do now. If there was other transactions that I did not want to post, I just want to do the accounts payable, I could change that to accounts payable, press enter, and then click OK. and now it says it's going to go ahead and post those. What I like to do when I do that is I come in and I want to go ahead and take a look to make sure. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the little reset button, and you'll notice now all the transactions are going from my unposted screen. If I use the toggle here, it will toggle over to aired, and you can see none of those transactions aired. If I hit toggle again, it pulls up all the transactions that were posted. So if I wanted the list of all those items that posted, I can click on my printer icon. It takes me into my spool file, and there's my post verification at the top. I can just check the box, and I hit the Adobe icon, and there's my post list. So I could then save this or print it or whatever you do to hold on to that information. So as we spoke before, you can see as I've gone through here, these kind of the breadcrumbs of all the items I went. So it's going to keep these tabs there until I physically close them down. I'm going to go ahead and keep them running so you can kind of see what happens when you have more than 4 or 5 tabs open at the same time. I'll go ahead and close that little menu there. Next up, we'll go ahead into accounts payable payment processing. So again, if you're authorized to run check runs, you'll get the check run menu. If you're not authorized, well, then you won't get these items on the menu. In this case, I have the ability here to run the full check run, the print checks and the register and go and update the run. In some cases, you may just do the selection and get through the prepayment report. Either way, it operates the same way it does now. So if I go ahead and click on the select check run profile, it locks you into your individual profile, your company. So you would then hit enter and select it and go through just like you do now with the check run. So I'm not going to go through the full check run there, but you do exactly like you do now as you work through and you select the invoices and then work with vendors if you want to change some of the payment information. So I'm going to exit out of that screen. We did move the manual payments and Instatext were on the same menu, but now they're on the menu by themselves. So again, in this case, if I wrote a manual check or whether I just didn't have the invoice keyed into the system or I did, I'd still use the same process here. So if I click on there, again, you look at the screen, it looks very familiar to the screen you're looking at now. I'll key one in real quick. So we'll go ahead and do the store. We'll say the payment was $100. And again, I'm using my tab here to navigate around the screen. The easiest way to go from field to field is using the tab. Here I have to select my bank. So again, I'm going to double click inside the box. It's going to call up all the banks available to me. I'm going to select the bank in which I wrote this check. Here I'm double clicking in that field to find the vendor. I'll go ahead and select the vendor here. And then I'll go ahead and click OK. And now if I come over here and say, let me pick all the open invoices, see what's available. And that was a bad choice here because I don't have one open for $100. Okay, so let me go back here. And then I'm going to go back in, select open invoices. So since there was no open invoices here, if I go back again, I don't see any there. Okay, so now I went and changed to a different vendor that has some open invoices. So again, I've keyed in my check information. I'm going to click the button that says select open invoices. It's going to toggle over and show me all the invoices that are open. My check here is for $135, so I'm paying that invoice down there. I go ahead and check the box and then hit select. And you can see now my payments equal the check amount. So I'm going to go ahead and hit exit. And now I'm ready to go ahead and update the payment. So again, very similar to what you do now in the Focused. You go ahead and key that stuff in. Next, I'm not going to go through instant vendor payment, but you can see by the screen it's exactly the same. You'll go through the add and then just generate and complete. Notice what's happening here now. So you see I've opened up a lot of different tabs and now I've gone down to the second one. So if I wanted to clean some of this up just to kind of keep track of where I'm at, I can hit my little down arrow here and you can see there's my instant vendor payment. So that's the screen I'm on. So again, as we just determined before, the way we want to do this is we want to go ahead and hit exit here get to the FMS splash screen, and then hit the X to close the tab. So notice what happens here. It's closed that tab and has moved me to another tab that I had opened, but it takes me back to the very first tab. So every time you do this, it's going to take you back to the first tab. I'm going to keep vendors open here, but I'm going to close a few of these other tabs. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and click on the tab. So here I am now on the AP invoice entry screen. I'm going to go ahead and click exit. I get to the splash screen. I'm going to go ahead and hit the X. Entries by creation date, same thing. I'm going to go ahead and hit the exit here, get to the splash screen, and then exit out. Check run, same thing. I'm already at the splash screen, so I'm going to hit the X and exit out. So I'm going to keep my vendors open. I'm going to do the same thing here with manual vendor payments, hit the exit, and go ahead and hit the X to close it down. So now I have my vendors and my spool file, and I'll leave both of those tabs opened. So next up, we want to go ahead and take a look at AP inquiry here, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the inquiry button. We're going to then go into AP vendor history. So if I click on that, you'll see here's the list of my vendors. Again, if I wanted to find a vendor, I can go ahead and type it in. So if I'm looking for Frito-Lay, key in the first two letters. I then hit enter and it brings me to the top of the list. I'm going to go ahead and check the box here, and I want to maybe display transactions. So as I do that, you can see all the transactions here. Takes me to the open first, and there's my toggle. So if I wanted to hit toggle, it will take me to the paid. And then if I want to hit toggle again, it'll take me to anything that's unposted. I'm going to toggle over to paid. So you would use this screen usually if the vendor was calling and asking what's the status of an invoice or something like that. To do that, I can physically, maybe I'm looking for the date. So if they told me the date was January 15, 2018, I can key that in, and then it will zero in on the date. If not, they gave me the invoice number, so I can key in the invoice number here and press enter, and then it will search on the invoice number and find the invoice for me. So here's what they were looking for, this $100. It was paid, so I can hit the checkbox here and I can display the transaction. So there's the information. Yeah, this was paid on this check and this date, and the check is still outstanding. So if I wanted to, I could just click my email icon, and it will again open up my email. It would automatically find the user or the email address for Frito-Lay, which is debbie.smith@fritolay.com. And notice what it does in the body of the email. It captures that payment information with the check date and the check number, and again the check status there. And if this said cleared, it would tell you when it actually physically cleared. It tells you when the check was cut as well. So you could then address the email to Debbie and say, here's the information on that invoice that you were questioning. Again, keeps this on one single page. You can use your scroll on your mouse or the bar over here to the right to see the whole thing. So no reason to toggle back between pages. So if I go ahead and exit, one more thing that's kind of on this menu is a search, and this is a new item as well. So you didn't have this before, but now you do. So if I was looking for some odd reason, maybe I just have an invoice and I don't know who the invoice was to or what the amount was, I just have a straight up invoice number. I can key in the invoice number and press enter. And what the system's going to do, it's going to query all the invoices on the system, and it's going to find any ones that match what I've keyed in here. So in this example, it was 4545. It found two invoices across two different vendors with that same number. So if I check the box here and hit a display, we can see there it is, invoice 4545, zero amount because it was voided, so evidently that was incorrect, keyed in. So something new there that you can do as well. Lastly, the AP reports menu. Again, you have all the same reports that you have access to now. Very easy to run any of them. I'll take this vendor listing first. So again, if I wanted to run a vendor listing, I can go ahead and just leave it as is, press enter, and now it's going to tell me that it's submitted it, so I can click OK. And as we saw before, if I want to look at it, I'm going to go to my spool files, which I had the tab opened already. And then I need to hit my reload to refresh my screen because I just ran that report. And then there's my vendor listing at the top. If I wanted to bring that in maybe in Excel, I can physically just go ahead and check the box and hit the Excel. You can see this is 21 pages, so it's a pretty large print file. So it takes a second or so to do the extracting and pull that into Excel. So there's my vendors into Excel. Once you have them here, you can do whatever it is that you want with them. Okay, so that ends this session. What I'm going to do again is always before I close out, I'm going to make sure that I close all my tabs by getting to the splash screen and hitting the X. So again, you can go pretty quickly if you know you're closing out of the whole thing. Once I get to the splash screen on each one, I close the tab. And now I'm ready to come over here and click the log out button to log out.